Sponsored by the Big 98, Nashville's #1 for new country and the home of the Bobby Bones Show.
It's such an honor to have on the incredible entertainer, actor, so many awards we don't even have time to mention it in the show, Mr. Las Vegas, Wayne Newton. Wayne, thanks for coming on the show.
Eric, it's such a pleasure to see you again, and it's a great pleasure to be on your show.
You know, having seen your show so many times in Las Vegas, I'm thrilled to see that you're taking this show back on the road, touring all over the country in between your residency that you're doing at the Flamingo. How did this whole up close and personal show come together, Wayne?
Well, it's interesting because we were moving hotels because we're under contract to Caesars, and they own so many different hotels.
Right.
And so they wanted to move me to a room at the Flamingo, and they said it's a very intimate room. And so I went to see the room, and I thought we should do an intimate show. Mm-hmm. And so I wrote a show called Wayne Up Close and Personal, and I went through some of the tapes and videos that we had over the years, mm-hmm. and there was about another probably 4 hours worth of stuff that I didn't use.
Right.
And so the Up Close and Personal show, even though it has the same name, varies from night to night, depending on what the audience wants to see or hear or talk about.
Right. Well, you know, and one of those things too, and some of our viewers may not realize this, Wayne, as such an incredible entertainer as you are, and the multiple times I saw you live while the best musicians, but you play 13 instruments. And so I'm wondering, out on the road, are you traveling with all 13 of these instruments, or is that just for at the Flamingo?
No, that's just at the Flamingo. We probably carry or have supplied to us at certain different shows, probably up to 7 or 8 instruments.
Wow.
And some would be there anyway, like piano or bass fiddle or those things that would be unnecessary for me to play. But all of those came about really when I first went to Vegas at 15 years old.
Right.
And doing 6 shows a night, 6 nights a week for 5 years. And
at the Fremont.
At the Fremont. I was the only singer in the group, and you can't sing that much. I don't care who you are. Right. And so I kept developing instruments in order to give me vocal relief. Wow. And so that's how I continued to move into instrument playing also.
Well, you know, and you're part of the fabric of Las Vegas and just such an incredible entertainer, Wayne. But I've got to brag on you to where, you know, you've been put in the same level as three of the greatest performers in the world. And that means Frank Sinatra, Elvis Presley, and you. And do you find it interesting now at this point in your career that you've worked with so many of these great artists, including Bobby Darin, you know, and Jackie Gleason, who helped discover you? How do you feel now at this point in your life to where you're still on tour and performing and you're in that level of contemporaries?
I really don't consider the level of contemporary as much as I do the ability to continue to do what I love doing. When I was 4 years old, my parents took me to see a Grand Ole Opera roadshow that had come to Roanoke and Virginia. And on the show was Hank Williams, Hawkshaw Hawkins, and Kitty Wells. And we were up in the nosebleed section because my parents couldn't afford anything more than that. I could not even see the performers from there. So I found myself at 4 years old, and I remember it like it was yesterday, looking around at the audience around me. And I saw the happiness on their faces. Mm-hmm. And I said to my mother, that's what I want to do, bring happiness to people. And so she took that to mean music. And so that's how I started into playing instruments.
And ended up on a radio show at only 6 years old.
Yes, had my own radio show. Then I developed bronchial asthma, And the doctor suggested to my family that we move from Virginia because of the weather to Phoenix, Arizona. So it took them about a year to decide uh, whether we would leave or not. And so in Phoenix, my brother and I had our own local television show from the time I was 8 years old until I was 15. At 15, an agent came through Phoenix from California, saw that television show, contacted my parents, and he said, I want that kid to try it in Las Vegas. And so we took a Greyhound bus up to Vegas, auditioned at the Fremont, and we were guaranteed 2 weeks, which turned into 5 years. 6 shows a night, 6 nights a week.
Well, and Wayne, besides being the incredible entertainer you are, also part of the mystique about you was that you were known for performing longer than anyone, on your shows. I mean, people would, when they paid to come see you, it was nothing for you to do a 3-hour show, which at that time in Las Vegas was kind of unheard of.
Well, not only was it unheard of, it cost me my job a couple of times. But one of them up at Harrah's in Tahoe, because they don't want people to stay away from the gaming that long. And so I said to Bill Harrah, okay, I will try it your way, but that has never worked for me. So I did, I think, an hour 15 show. And I started getting fan mail saying, we're sorry you were ill the night we were in. So I had another talk with Mr. Harrah, and we went back to doing the Wayne Newton kind of show.
Well, and speaking of which, correct me if I'm wrong, 165 albums in your career to date?
So far. I'm still at it.
And you've performed more shows as an entertainer than anyone else in Las Vegas. I think it's topped over 25,000 at this point, Wayne. Is that right?
Actually, it's more like 50,000 because doing 5 or 6 shows a night, 6 nights a week for 5 years adds up pretty fast. And then once I moved into the main rooms of Nevada, that was 2 shows a night, 7 nights a week.
Right.
And I did 1 year, I did 35 weeks without a day off.
And looking back, talking about Bobby Darin and certainly Jackie Gleason, and, Jackie, had you on his show 12 times and was a huge fan of yours. And then the Lucy show that you appeared on. I remember, Wayne, seeing you on Bonanza.
Yes.
And I think that was one of your first movie roles.
That was my first acting role. And interestingly enough, that's the first time I met Elvis Presley personally. Wow. He had played Vegas while I was there, but I was doing 6 shows a night, 6 nights a week. I couldn't go see him. And so I get invited to do, I think around 1963-ish, a Bonanza show. And they shot that at the Paramount Motion Picture Studio in Los Angeles. And so I get there and I go to the studio, and I'm sitting there studying my script, and I felt somebody tap me on the shoulder, and I turned around, and it was Elvis Presley. Wow. And I was such a big fan. Anyway, still am. And I started mumbling about what a big fan I was, how much I loved his music. And finally, he held up his hand for me to quit talking. And I did. And he said, Wayne, he said, I'm doing one of my movies on the next set here at Paramount. And he said, the guys at the band told me you were over here. So I came over to ask you a question. And I said, sure. I said, do you know a girl by the name? And he called her name, and I shall withhold it for obvious reasons. And I started to smile, and I said, well, yes, as a matter of fact, I do know her. We're dating. And he looked at me and he said, so were we. And so we both started to laugh.
Oh, my goodness.
And became instantaneous friends for the rest of his life. And
Wow.
he was one great human being.
Wow. And speaking of which, with the up close and personal, Wayne, I don't know how you were able to condense that down with all of your history, as an entertainer, with the movies, with TV, with everything you've done. Certainly, I remember, at the Las Vegas Super Speedway when you would go, when they first launched that, and now, you're doing things with the Golden Knights and with the Raiders.
Yes.
You're constantly involved, and also with your charity work. Many viewers may not realize, that Bob Hope handed over the baton to you with the USO shows, and then I think you got an award for every area of conflict you performed in for our soldiers.
We have been in every major conflict that our country has been in since Vietnam, and I was in Vietnam twice, entertaining our men and women in the armed forces. And so when Mr. Hope passed that on in the year 2000, I have taken his position as chairman of the Celebrity Circle since then, and I'll do that the rest of my life.
How incredible. Well, speaking of the rest of your life, you have a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. You have I think you were the first star on the Las Vegas Walk of Fame. Let's talk Arabian horses. Certainly you play 13 instruments, do a new album, constantly touring. You've got your residency at the Flamingo. How is it going with the Arabian horses now? Because also you've won awards for that, Wayne.
Well, we were chosen, and I'm so proud of, by the Arabian Horse Association as one of the top 2 breeders of Arabian horses in the world. At one time, I had 400 head, and I have exported horses all over the world, to Saudi Arabia, to Europe, to South America, all over. And I still have 40 head of horses. And my 2 loves in life were music and horses. And I can tell you which afforded the other.
It's good to have a day or a night job, right, Wayne?
It truly is.
Well, and I know also with, because obviously we have, mutual friends with your instrument collection, you have some incredible instruments as well,
Yes,
that you've
I do.
accumulated over the years.
I have one of Elvis's guitar. I have one of Johnny Cash's guitar. I have on and on and on. I won't go into it, but I have been totally blessed, not only to receive those things as gifts from those people,
Right.
but also to have known them. And when I look back in retrospect, which is the only way one can do it truly, because when you're going through it and they're friends, they're a friend. You don't
Right.
think about taking a picture together, for example.
No.
Nowadays, of course, with phones the way they are, everything is a picture. But that wasn't the case when I met Frank and Dean and Sam and Elvis and Bobby Darin and those people. It was just a way of life. And they were always kind to me and always protected me to make sure that I didn't get in trouble. And as Mrs. Sinatra said one time, that was Frank's way of befriending me, so that I didn't get in trouble, go down the wrong path, and I didn't show up at any of his parties.
That is amazing. Well, and I've got to ask you this, Wayne. Obviously the tour is going very well. You continue to have sold out shows. Are you working on another album? I mean, what's next for you? Because I know you're always working on another project, Wayne.
I'm always working on another album, and we've got 2 or 3 scripts that I'm looking at as a motion picture. So quitting is not in my vocabulary or in my mind. My mother told me very young, she said, pick an age that you are and that you like and stay there. So I'm 24.
It's so amazing, Wayne, getting ready for the show to have you on, to where it's like looking back, as a young man and just with your career on how you've continued to prosper with this, and still the crowds just love you. And some of your, people, that have come up through music and everything with you have retired, but you just love to play. You just take a break and you come back and do more shows, Wayne.
Yes, as a matter of fact, the longest break I have ever had in my career was during COVID. And I started, my wife started to take me to a psychiatrist, but I started having nightmares about being on stage and forgetting what to say or not knowing how to deal with a particular subject. Because coming through the lounges in Nevada, doing the 6 shows a night, 6 nights a week, if something could happen, it happened in those 5 years. Right. I mean, from people throwing jabs at you verbally, you know, hecklers were a way of life. Then we had ladies who would unzip their dresses in front and reveal themselves. And I think my voice started to change then. And then we had in 2 instances, we had a person die in the audience. And I started to make sure that the people in charge of the showroom would help the person get out of the room.
Right.
In one instance, we had a gentleman die, and he, quote unquote, had his daughter with him. And when the people arrived at the booth to remove him, she stood up and yelled at a very quiet part of the show, "No, don't you move him. He waited his whole life to see Wayne Newton, and he's going to see him." So I left him there for the rest of the show. You know,
that's
so
amazing.
If it could happen, it did.
Well, you know, and I had to, you know, listen to all of your catalog and not be, I mean, all of your catalog so much, but just listening to a lot of it this morning before we did the interview. I got to ask this question, Wayne. How many songs do you have in your head lyrically? Because I know, seeing you multiple times live, you know, you always changed up the set list. You always, you know, when you had fans, you know, I remember when they would hand up, you know, requests and everything, you always played requests. How many songs do you have in your mind that you know the lyrics to perform?
It's interesting. I couldn't give you a number because that has never entered my mind. But I can tell you that I remember the first lyrics to the first song I ever sang. And that was called Blues on My Mind. And I could sing that for you today in terms of the lyrics. So it's just something that stuck and stayed.
Well, you know, and I got to ask you too, there's a rumor that Bobby Darin gave up a song for you to record and perform because he wanted to help out your career. Is that factual?
Bobby started my recording career. I had recorded like a song in Phoenix when I was 9 or 10 years old, you know, but nothing came from it. And Bobby saw the first Jackie Gleason show, and he called around New York the next morning to find out where I may be appearing. And they told him the Copacabana Lounge. And so he showed up the next night, and he was in the audience. I'm such a big Bobby Darin fan. And I saw him when I walked out on stage, and I went into temporary paralysis, but I finished the show somehow. I don't remember what I sang or what I did, but I finished that show. And there was a waiter standing at the bottom of the stairs. And he said, "Mr. Darin wants to meet you." And so, mind you, this was right after the first Jackie Gleason show.
Right.
And so I walked back to where Bobby was seated, and he stood up and he says, "I'm Bobby Darin." I said, "I know." And he said, "I saw you on the Jackie Gleason show last night." And he said, "I called around to find out where you were working, and they told me here." He said, "So I came to ask you a question." And I started to panic a little bit because I thought he couldn't know the girl Elvis asked me about. So I finally gathered myself up enough to say, "Go ahead and ask your question, sir." And he said, "Are you recording?" And I said, "No, sir." He said, "You are now." He said, "You and I will be in the studio next week together here in New York, and I'll be producing your records from this point forward." Well, we lost him much too soon in life, obviously, at 37. But during that period of time, he gave me a song called Dankeschön. I found out about a year after I had recorded that, and it became the hit that it did, that the song had been written for Bobby Darin to record and follow his hit of Mac the Knife with it. But he was so intent to make sure that he got me a hit record that he gave me the song that was meant for him to sing.
That story just gives you goosebumps.
Yes, it does.
That is so powerful, Wayne. Just amazing.
Yes, it does.
Well,
so I will love Bobby Darin forever.
Just incredible. And so many people, but you've done the same, Wayne, to where, obviously other entertainers and people and everything have helped your career. And you've done the same for a number of musicians in Las Vegas and everywhere. And it's just a great testament to your level of entertainment that you continue to provide. I want to make sure for our viewers, you're going to be here in Nashville at the Ryman on September 13th. You've got an ongoing tour. You're still doing a residency at the Flamingo in Las Vegas, Nevada. You have all the dates for that as well. Where do our viewers need to go for everything Wayne Newton and for the next new album that will come out? Where should viewers go?
I think just WayneNewton.com will service that purpose, and we would be thrilled to have your look.
I'll tell you what, we can't wait to see you live. I'm thinking, though, like I told you before we started the interview, Wayne, there's going to have to be like a documentary and maybe, one of those coffee table books with all your memories and pictures. You got a lot of projects to go. You can't slow down now.
Well, I'm not going to slow down. And if something happens to me, I'll just come back another way. That's all.
Well, Wayne Newton, it is an honor to have you on the show. We can't wait to see you at the Ryman. And I know our viewers are going to enjoy all of your performances, the great music you still deliver. Thanks for coming on.
God bless you. Thank you. And I look forward to seeing you there.
Sponsored by the Big 98, Nashville's #1 for new country and the home of a Bobby Bones Show.